Thanks everyone for coming back to our next edition of Econ Talks. Gareth, latest Infometrics forecast showing a bit of a different picture for the economy. Essentially, this is going to last for a bit longer still. We haven't seen the worst in some respects.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, the economy's done better than I think anyone expected coming out of lockdown. More spending happening, life returning pretty quickly to normal in many respects, and that's shown through in a lot of the indicators we've had over the last few months. But our concern is still that the labour market has more of a hit to come through to it. We've got the wage subsidy, which is now running out from the government, and I think that's not leading to immediate job losses. We're certainly not seeing that in the benefit numbers at this stage, but our concern would be that as we come into the summer period around Christmas and peak, what would normally be the peak time for tourism, that we'll start to see businesses potentially under a lot more pressure with a hole in their revenue, and that's starting to create pressure on jobs and seeing job losses coming through.
And I mean, that global picture remains pretty fragile. I mean, New Zealand seemingly doing it all right at the moment in terms of keeping COVID-19 out. Like you say, that bit of a rebound that's happened. I mean, what is the global picture going to mean for New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, look, exports are doing okay at the moment, but you look over the longer term, the next couple of years, and certainly forecasts for where the global economy might go, not really doing us any favours. COVID case numbers internationally at record high levels, and obviously the pandemic's still rolling on through there. So from an export perspective, it will be, look, we think people still have to eat. So I think in broad terms, a lot of our exports will do okay, but probably issues there in terms of just how much of a price premium we might be able to command for some of the stuff that we export. And ultimately, that's going to place some pressure on some of those export revenues. So while I don't want to be particularly downbeat about the implications of the global economy for New Zealand, you do have to have a degree of caution about what is out there.
Definitely. And I mean, turning a bit closer to home for a moment, that consumer spending has really bounced post-lockdown, and that has, been a lot stronger than I think a lot of us expected. What does that mean for sort of what this economic recovery looks like? I mean, we were originally expecting a bit more of a U shape. Is that still the case?
No, we've gone with something more close to a W now, although the second half of that W is bordering on the U that we were previously looking for. So I think what we've had is a very sharp drop, obviously with lockdown, a very sharp bounce back up. But we think through 2021 rather that we are going to see job losses firstly. That flows through into weaker spending activity. And look, household spending makes up 60% of the New Zealand economy. And so if we're seeing falls in that through the first 2 to 3 quarters of next year, that is going to drag economic activity lower. So tough period next year, we think, for the economy, and probably a relatively slow recovery coming out the other side of it, as it takes time for those people who have lost work to retrain and find new positions in the economy, and for new businesses to be started up.
And I guess the one area of strength, though, that sort of is defying all expectations is the housing market. And we are coming to the view, aren't we, that that thing just seems to be holding up so much better, and that the possible pressures to push prices lower are very much something of the past in terms of our thinking.
Yeah, the housing market, I think, has surprised everyone with its strength, both in terms of what sales volumes have been doing, and also in terms of the ongoing strength in prices as they've continued to push higher as well. Look, job losses next year, if they come through, we do think that will take the heat out of the housing market, but not to the point where it drives house prices down, because you've had a spike in population growth with New Zealanders returning home, and there's a portion of those who've had money and are wanting to get in, buy property and find somewhere to live. But you've also had interest rates which have plunged to record low levels. This week we've seen a mortgage rate below 2% for the first time. And look, that has had definitely an impact in terms of people wanting to get into the market, whether it's first-time property buyers, whether it's investors whose money in the bank is not doing anything, so try and get a better return in the housing or the share market. And indeed, if you're an older person and you're sitting on some money in the term deposit in the bank, why wouldn't you help your kids into the housing market? You're not getting any interest on your money while it's sitting in the bank. So a whole bunch of factors there, which, I think if we look back 6 months, we underestimated just how much they might flow through into keeping that housing market going. Of course, issues there in terms of the housing market as well, it means that the sort of inequality that we've seen, intergenerational inequality with older people who've got their house, they're all good, but younger people, almost giving up on the dream of ever getting into the housing market. That's being exacerbated. And also we know that the job losses that have occurred to date due to COVID have been concentrated among renters and among Māori and Pacifica as well. Those people, generally speaking, their home ownership rates are lower than the average population. And so those younger people, it's only making it harder for them to get into that housing market.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, some difficult things, of course. Housing market holding up, but as you've noted, we've had a good boost after lockdown, but the path ahead still remains pretty tough. And we are expecting that once we've blown through this bit of resurgence, we are going to see that sort of softer track of economic activity before we rebuild. Always useful to know how those forecasts are evolving. Always good to talk as well, Gareth, and we'll catch you and everyone else on the next edition of Econ Talks.